Okay. Hi, I'm Vanessa with Ellie and Mac, and I hope you're excited to be back. This is like such an exciting series that I just cannot contain myself. So, thank you everyone who put in your comments last week. If you're joining me because you just think this is a cute top, I am very happy about that because I'm going to show you all the details on how to make this top multiple different ways. But as many of you may know, this is week 2 of our accessibility series, and this top we are starting off with a bang. I'm just kind of having a vintage moment recently. Like, I just cannot stop getting into my vintage fabrics. And when I saw this red picnic and I had a thought of what I wanted to do, and with Valentine's coming up, I'm like, this is the time. So not only am I using vintage fabric, but I also found some vintage bias tape and some vintage buttons. Now, why do I need buttons with a tie shirt? Well, that's what's going to help us with our accessibility today. So, I am not a medical professional. Back when I was 17, my job was a CNA and I helped get a lot of people dressed and showered. It's also where I acquired a lot of my grandma hobbies. And I learned so much from helping others with the different accessibility issues on how to really think about clothing in a different way. And so I'm really excited to be able to take that knowledge and mesh it with my sewing knowledge to help everyone feel a little more comfortable in our clothes. But as we go through this, you can either choose the accessibility option or you can choose the option with the tie. So this is up to you. But what I love about using the elastic and the buttons is that you can easily slip your fingers into the elastic and go over the buttons. So let me just show you. You can see the loop and buttons. So it's really easy. I'm going to try to do this and not show too much. So if you just had like shoulder cuff replacement and you're down one arm, or if you're recovering from a stroke and you're down one arm, you can easily slip 2 fingers in, grab a hold of the button, and release the elastic. So this is absolutely a game changer for that. What I also like for it is the elastic stretches. And so it makes it so nice and comfortable. Also, if you're breastfeeding, maybe you don't want to have these ties so accessible. And so having the elastic and buttons can give you another security with your shirt. And so you don't have little kids pulling at your ties and undoing your shirt. So there is a lot of reasons why I think adding this elastic and buttons could be useful to so many people, regardless if it's an accessibility issue or not. Feeling this comfortable in a woven is amazing. Like, it does not feel like I'm in a woven fabric. It does not feel like I'm in a wrapped tie dress, because sometimes when you're in those, it can feel a little constrictive. And this is just so nice and stretchy. So definitely a hack you might want to try. So let's get to the cutting mat and let me show you how to make this top. A couple weeks ago in the comments, someone mentioned that using the Air Noir soluble Dritz pen can become permanent if you iron it. And I did look this up and it said that it can leave white lines on dark fabric, but I do now suggest testing it. I have never had issues, but if you're concerned, you can test it. Now, next we're going to be cutting some strips. So these are 1/2 inches wide by 26.5 inches long. And the reason why we're cutting these strips is to make the ties. Now, if you're going to actually be doing the ties, I suggest you add on about 3 extra inches and then cut it in half after you sew down a 1/2 inch seam allowance and turn them. So that way you're going to be ending up with 2 ties instead of just one very long one. So, one of my goals this year is to be able to master this little hook turner. I struggle so hard with this little turner guy, and it's the only way to have thinner ties. So, it's very important for me to actually learn it and to be able to do it correctly. And so, this is just something that I am fighting with, and I'm going to get it this year. I'm going to get it. But as you can tell, today is not the day. It did take me some time, but I did get it turned out. If you are somebody who's struggling with this, you are not alone. So once you turn it and you have it the right direction, then you can iron it down. And then I just am tying cute little bows here. Now, if I was not tying the bows like I am right now, I would just be cutting these in half and I would be ending up with 6 ties instead of 3 bows. The Leonie is so beautiful. I love this top and dress. It does curve in a little bit at the chest, and so I just wanted to straighten that to give it just a little bit more coverage here. And then at the bottom, you can either do a curved hem with a gather, or you can go straight across or make it a dress. But this is some vintage fabric, and sometimes the vintage fabric is just a little bit thinner than normal. This is like only 30 inches wide, so I couldn't fit the back on fold, and so I had to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And also you can tell that this is wrinkly, and I have ironed this 3 times so far, but because I've washed it, let it dry, and then I folded it up for a year, the wrinkles are really hard to get out, and so I just think another wash is the only way to get them out. Now this is the easiest way to do darts. If you could do a line along the center and then you use this pen to come and do the sides, then you only have to do one side of it and fold it in half, and you have that half fold line. And you don't have to go too dark with that pen, because when you iron it, when you're not supposed to iron it, it does get darker, and then you can easily stitch with the, you want to leave the tail really long here so you can knot it, but you can easily see where to sew, and it just comes perfectly like this. So if you're struggling with those diamond darts, just doing the half line is very helpful. Now, when we're tying the knot here, can you see how those lines have already faded so much? You want to make sure that you just tie this like 3 times, but you're not going to be pulling really tight on that first knot. You want to make sure that you're not going to be creating any puckers with these beautiful little darts. Now here I'm at the serger, and I'm just going to be serging all the ends of the pieces just together, just to make it faster, and it'll come together a little bit more easier. So now that I have all of it serged that I needed serged, this is but the part that you probably don't need to worry about is sewing that back seam. But sometimes you just don't know what the width of these vintage fabrics are going to be, and you just have to make little alterations and hacks, because this fabric is just too cute not to use. Like, I just could not say no to it, even though it was not wide enough. So if this happens, you can add a 1/2 inch and then do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, or add 3/8 inch. Now back over at my iron on the darts again, and we're just going to try to, we're opening up that back seam as well as opening up those darts. I did bring in my ironing ham for these darts to make sure that they captured that curvature. But as of right now, I'm just trying to make sure that I get some more of those wrinkles out. I did add some water to my iron to help with the steams at this point, but I didn't want to add the steam while I was ironing those darts, because as you can see, they are pretty much almost gone. And I just, with that pen, you don't want to add the water to it or it'll make it disappear. So I had to do it with a dry iron up till this point. But as you can see, sometimes your vintage fabric is just going to have some wrinkles for a minute. But once I got done with this and I worked with it so much, the wrinkles actually did come out. So if you have that problem, just be patient. Now here we're going to be sewing up the shoulder seams. So with this pattern, it is marked at 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to be doing 3/8 of an inch from this point forward. I have so many long serger ties. Now here is my bias tape. And so what's the difference between bias tape and binding? Well, with binding, you're going to actually have the sides folded over and then it's going to be folded again. With bias tape, you're only going to have both sides folded in. Now there is hem tape where only one side is folded and then you can fold it up and hem it. It's going to be very similar to what we are doing today, but there is a little bit of a difference with how you treat it. So this one you could use binding, and it'd be really cute to have that red binding all the way around the sleeve, but I couldn't help using this vintage bias tape because I do find it really interesting. Now it is very similar to as adding binding right here. You're just going to be stitching on that crease with it, and you're just going to be stitching all the way along this whole arm side. So that's what we're working on right here, is the arm circle, arm side. And This one, you want to make sure that your side seams are open. So don't close your side seams first. Keep everything open. This is going to give us the nicest finished details, which when I'm working with wovens, I kind of get obsessed about. It's just having those beautiful finished details is like part of the fun and just the order of operations. I don't know, I find it intriguing. So once you get the bias tape completely on, now it's time to do those side seams, and you want to unfold that bias tape at the end because you're going to be sewing it together. So this is going to be lining up not only the seams of your top or your dress, but it's going to be lining up the seams of the tape, bias tape as well. So you want to double back stitch that. And then this is what's so wonderful about this is you can fold it under and top stitch it. And this is going to give you such a beautiful finished detail on the inside. No one's really going to see this. Maybe they can see it around your underarm, but I love it. I love having this little detail. But if you would like the red to be showing, you can definitely use binding. So now here we're going to be deciding where we're going to be adding either our ties or our tape. So I started at the 9 inches from where you normally would add the ties, and then I moved up every 4.5 inches. So you have 9 inches, and then you're going to divide that into 3. So you're going to have it at 0 inches, 4.5 inches, and 9, starting at where the original ties go. Now we need to cut our elastic. So if this was a black top with black elastic and black buttons, this detail will definitely blend in. You also can do a lot tinier of buttons than I used and a lot smaller of elastic. But as you know, I'm doing the accessibility options with this, so I wanted to pick big buttons and big enough elastic that I could fit my fingers through. So that's why I made the choices for myself, but you may want to make different ones. You can also use chalk in any of these areas that I've been using this pen. I just really like this pen. I've just been really enjoying not having chalk smeared everywhere right now. Now we want to add an elastic, and this is for all of them. You want to be able to add an elastic at where the tie normally goes on the opposite side, and this is so you can add it in on the inside of the shirt. So now we're just going to be basting on all these pieces of elastic or the ties. And this is also a good thing to think about. So if you're sewing this before surgery, or if you're sewing it for a loved one who doesn't have the full range of motion on one side of their body, you want to make sure that the ties are going to be on the right side of the body, that they're going to be able to move. So it's okay to have this flipped from a normal, tie shirt, just so you can have your working hand be able to use these elastics. It's not going to work if the shirt is not accessible to that arm, that it has the ability to loop this around the button. So just keep that in mind. And when you're kind of imagining this and you have it sewed together, you can try it on and kind of figure out which side is going to help have the button so you can actually attach the shirt together. Now we are going to be using this bias tape just like we did around the arm side, and I just love this. I don't know why. Sorry, I keep saying it. I just love a good finished edge, and this Leonie has the best finished edges. This is what's in the pattern, and I was just so excited to bring it to the arms as well. Just because you're recovering or you need these little details does not mean you don't deserve a beautiful shirt. So now we're going to be tucking in the bottom of that bias tape, and then we're going to be tucking it around the back. And look how nice that is. It'll keep those ties in place, or like in my case, the elastic. And here we're just going to be top stitching this on. I'm top stitching this on at 1/4 inch. And so there was the same 1/4 inch around my arm side as well as down the front of the blouse. But I do love the look of this. I just feel like sometimes we just kind of get into this moment where we're going to have surgery or we're going to be down for a little bit, and you just kind of get sick of wearing the same, oversized sweatshirts or oversized tee and pajama pants. And so I really wanted to bring to this series some really nice, beautiful pieces that you're going to love to wear. Now, if this was a regular tie shirt, you would just ignore this step. But here we're going to have the bows tied already, and then we're just going to clip them on top of the elastic. And then we're just going to be stitching those on with the sewing machine. So you will never have to tie these ties. Like, this is the equivalent of super gluing the Barbie shoes on just so your daughter doesn't lose them. It's going to be so nice to have this always already tied and not have to worry about it. Now, once we get them on, look how cute that is. And so here, I'm going to be stretching those loops because we want to have a little stretch to the loops. And again, I'm using my handy dandy Dritz marker. And I want this stretch because if I have them too loose, the loops will come off of the buttons. And I'm just going to be marking this with my pen. Now, it is much easier to put this on your body and then pin it where you want it and then mark it in a mirror. Now, if you do not want to be doing these buttons, these little marks are where you're going to be adding the ties. So regardless, you're going to need this. Now, this loop, I know it was hard to see where I was adding that, but that is where that other loop is. And you need this regardless of which one you are doing. Now we're going to see where we're going to need the button for that inside. And I like to put it on that serge because that way I don't have thread going on the outside of my fabric where somebody can see. So here are my buttons. Now again, I picked some very big buttons because I wanted this to be as accessible as possible, but you can use just a normal button-down shirt buttons. But I also loved these buttons because they only have 2 holes. So it made sewing them on a lot faster. And because we're doing the elastic, you want to wind your thread around your button and then you want to tie it just so it lifts it off of your fabric a little higher. So once you get done sewing on this button, if you have the ties, that's when you're going to start adding them and sewing them where you have already marked them. But let me just show you how this loop works. And so this mannequin is just a little bit smaller than I am, but you can see you don't see any threads and it's going to hold it together closed. Now I can see my little marker, and so I always like to start on the outside of my fabric with these types of buttons. Let me get you adjusted so you can see. And I have that knot right there. So now I'm going to come into the button and then I can start working it back and forth. So I have my thread doubled, and I like to go about 3 times to make sure that it's definitely secure here. And so, but my 3rd time, I'm going to just go through the top buttons and then I can wrap it and then I can tie it right here. So this means that the knots are sitting underneath my button and not on the inside of my fabric. And so it gives it a nice finished look on both sides, and then also helps lift up that button so the elastic can easily make it over. So here are my 3 buttons all nice and added, and that's what they're going to look like, or those are going to be your ties, right? And you can see how easy it is to just put those loops on, even with one hand. The reason why we're starting with shoulders is we got an email to Ellie and Mac about one of our customers needing clothes to go over a shoulder replacement. So we are here, we are listening to you. Now, often when you have these sort of things, you're going to want to be wearing some sleeveless. And so that's why we made this sleeveless. But last week, I had to go to the hospital with one of my kids just to get a blood draw. Nothing was wrong. And I noticed somebody walking in that had the whole arm, sling going on. And she was in a tank top dress. And it was so cold out, 30 degrees out. So sometimes these surgeries, they don't line up with the weather. They're just not conducive to 30-degree weather. And I just think having your arms out seems so cold. And so I felt like the Chelsea Bolero solved that problem because you can easily put on one arm. It's nice and loose, giving you lots of extra space. You can size up as much as you need. And then if you get a little too hot, you can slide one arm out and tuck it into the sling. You can also take off the whole thing, put it on backwards, and you could use it for a breastfeeding cover up. So these boleros are so nice for so many different circumstances. They help extend your summer wardrobe. They help keep your arms warm. They can do so many things. So having one that doesn't take up too much space and that you can easily take it on and off is amazing. So let me give you a quick run through of how you make this little bolero. So we have three lengths on this Chelsea Bolero, and the longest one is perfect if you need the cover up. Whereas if you're going to be putting have a sling on, you're going to want to have the shortest option to give you the least amount of fabric that you're going to have to either tuck in or wrap around your shoulder. So this one I love a dolman so much, and a dolman sweater is so adorable to me. And as you can see, the arm size are open quite a bit, so it is a nice loose fitting sweater, but I normally actually size up a size or two. Here I'm doing my size, but if you want it to have a little larger, you can. And then I'm just cutting the regular sleeve, but as you can see, that beautiful gather sleeve there can definitely be an option for you as well. And I always mark the front with a triangle, only the front, just so I can remember. And then I love doing the band option, especially in this gorgeous rib knit fabric. I am in love with this rib knit sweater knit. It is just so soft and so beautiful. I got it from Boho's for 50% off. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need this in every single color. So anyways, you're going to just be cutting your strips. And these are not too wide. I just really like this sweater. I love everything, all the options. It's just so easy. And then you have the sleeve cuff. And so you can also do an option where you have facing if you like to, but that is completely up to you. So here I already have my shoulder seams sewed, and I'm just going to show you how quick and easy it is. You're just going to clip on your sleeves, and because I have that triangle on the front, it's really easy for me to see which side goes where. And again, we're having right sides together. And what's so nice about this pattern is I know that we have some serger lovers out here where you really just like to use your serger and not your sewing machine. And so this pattern, because it's all banded, there is no need to hem. So we got you. And so now we're going to be sewing up the sides of the whole sleeve as well as the side seams together. So within just a couple trips to my sewing machine, to my serger, you can already see that this sweater is like almost done. Like it's just that fast. I can't rave about this type of pattern anymore. So once you have that all completed, you're just going to sew together both ends of that band, and you're just going to clip it first, making sure that you find the center of the top as well as the bottom of the sweater and clipping those center seams on, and then you're going to clip all the way around. And then again, back from the serger, you can see it's all nice and on. And then all we have to do is add our cuffs on. So once you take your cuff and you turn it out, then you can easily put it on over the cuff and line it up with those bottom seams. And then you're just going to serge around it and stretch it on just like a regular cuff. Now let's put these together. Look how adorable this combination is. I absolutely love it. Look at those beautiful darts in the back giving such a lovely shape. I love how much this crosses over, as well as this stretch with the elastic. Now these ties I did roll hem, and this sweater knit works perfectly. I just feel like we should be able to have something beautiful and cute even when we're recovering, even when we don't feel like ourselves. Just having something nice to put on will help make you feel even better. Isn't that so fast to make? Oh my goodness. I love how quick of a sew, and it's just so useful. Like, this is just one great sweater that I just keep coming back to over and over again. It even has a gather sleeve option too, so it can be very romantic for Valentine's Day. So thank you everyone who commented on my recovery pillow video. I really appreciate it. I'm really sorry for the one who your husband had surgery 2 weeks before it was posted. Oh, those surgeries are so hard. And so hopefully anybody else who's having that come up knows right where to go. But if with all the other comments, we are going to be going through one by one and making sure that we address any issues that you guys may be having that need those alterations. So please keep putting it in the comments. We are listening. I am really trying hard to make as many accessible pattern hacks over the next few weeks as possible. So we are here. Please like, please comment. We would love it if you subscribe, and we just wish you happy sewing. I'll catch you next time.